Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. We have returned. The sports agents of chaos are here off of a very brief 1 week hiatus. It's funny that we're doing this on Easter because you would have thought that, this week would be the hiatus episode and last week would have been the one where we record. But like we said, we are agents of chaos here on this show. We do things our way, aka the way that our schedules actually line up because life is complicated, everybody. But enough of that. We are here to escape from all that and have a grand old fun time doing it and causing a little bit of chaos here and there. That's why it's in the show name. Roll credits. And there we go. As always, it is one of your guys, Jurgen, with you. I'm always happy to just be talking sports in general, but especially talking football with people that I know are football experts that know what they're talking about, because I've been near a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about. Trust me, it ain't fun. And with me today is one of my compatriots who joins me on this show on a relatively weekly basis. He's always here, my guy, Justin. How we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to be back. I'm excited to talk some more football. It's been too long at this point.
Yeah, right. It's been a little bit. We had to take off last week because scheduling conflicts and all this stuff. But that I don't foresee that stopping us too much. For those that have been seeing the last couple of weeks, of course, one of our favorites, Podfather Rick, is unable to join us in this episode. He is away, Justin. I've discovered the real reason he's away, Justin.
Oh yeah.
Yes, he is actually looking to purchase a submarine because the inevitable failure of the Jets' next draft makes him want to be far away from any Jetson plane as possible. So he is going to look for a submarine to live out the rest of his days up until the very start of the NFL season, because the man's not going to live down there forever. You can only stay in a submarine for so long.
Yeah, I hope he's got room for two.
Oh man. I think the Jets have a real chance, in terms of actually doing good at the draft, but there's always that small possibility that at least one of those 2 first-round picks is going to be murked up a little bit. Who knows? Maybe, just maybe, some people that mock may have an interesting selection as well. Speaking of mock, seamless transition, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be doing that, relatively speaking, today. Now, this is not the full mock draft we're talking about. When I say full, I do not mean 7 rounds. But we have said in the past that we do plan on doing a mock draft on this show, and we will. It's a little bit different today. So what me and Justin thought of, this was actually the brainchild of Justin. So, you named this baby, Justin. It's all yours. Pay for the 18 years and all that. We are going to show you round 1 mocks of ourselves done with PFF's mock draft simulator. Amazing simulator, by the way. Will be used in the future, most definitely. But we're going to be we've done round 1 mocks. So me and Justin had all 32 teams picks. We controlled, well, not 32 teams. We had all 32 picks, and we made the first round selections for every single team in the draft based off of, well, whatever lives inside of our brains, which sometimes for me, it is tumbleweeds with a sign of a thunderstorm. I don't know why. It is interesting to say the least, the selections I ended up making. I definitely think yours occupy the same space, Justin. I think for doing this, it was a lot of fun having to put on, for 32 different selections, the different mindsets. And I definitely had a fun time doing it. I think you definitely say the same, especially because you had control of the Jets picks, so you could make sure they were right.
Well, I took who I thought would be best when I had the available picks. You know what I mean? I had to stay true to myself. I had to say, all right, what's the real, real player pool that's going to be there for the teams that I want at that time. And it's not easy if you're really truly, sticking to your guns. But who knows, maybe this is how it stamps out in the future, and hopefully these players are good players for years to come.
Hopefully. And, we hope that for every single kid that gets drafted, especially in the first round, like we want them to succeed and we want them to have, great careers. And luckily, thankfully, the USFL is back, Justin. The USFL returning, the XFL returning. There will be eventual opportunities for even more jobs in football, which I think is just a great thing overall, because the more football, more fun. That's what we believe here on this podcast and every single podcast that ends up talking about football. But we are going to get under it right away because we got 32 selections to make, Justin. So I don't think we're going to waste any time here. I don't think you have a trivia today. If you do, I'm probably going to get it wrong anyways.
We could save it for next week. I figured we got more than 32. We got 64 picks to go through because we each did our own. So
fair point. That's technically speaking, 64 is 100% correct. And Rick did not send one in this week, then that would be 96, and we would both set aside the rest of our day for it. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we will get to our mocks. So, again, with Pro Football Focus's mock draft simulator, which I'm pretty sure it should be in the description. I typed out the description before it should be in, and if it's not, well, blame the service, not me. I definitely copy and pasted that link. This is the beginning of Justin's mock. So we're going to alternate between each other, probably going in between, I want to say 4 or 5 picks at a time, technically 5 because we have 5 guys on the screen, but we'll figure it out as we go. Justin, these are your first 5 selections. I'm going to toss the floor over to you. Run us through the mindset, one by one of each team selecting here in the top 5. Top 5 is always interesting, Justin, because obviously these are the teams that had the worst records during the season, of course. But at the same time, these are also the picks that, per draft calculators, these are the picks that hold the most value. And these are the picks that you need to get right as a franchise. So I think it's going to be interesting come real life eventually what these teams make. So let's run through in your mind what these teams should have done.
So getting started, I figured this is a draft year that's a little unusual to me. There's usually that like clear top 4 or 5 players, and I think we have something similar to that, but it's usually a little more clear where these players might land. I don't think it's so cut and dry this year. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson on everyone's big board far and away is usually the number 1 guy there for having the highest floor, but I really truly think if you're in Jacksonville, your issue last year was not necessarily on the defensive side of the ball. They had their issues on both sides for sure, but their issue was keeping Trevor Lawrence upright and making sure he got the time to make the correct decisions. And I think in that case, if that's really your issue, your number 1 player has to be defending Trevor Lawrence. And, Ekwonu, he is the most versatile lineman in this draft, in my opinion. He's played multiple positions. He's an excellent starting tackle. They have Cam Robinson. They signed Schreff. I think that 1 or 2, just because you have 2 guys doesn't mean you can't go for another one. And I think it would be an excellent move for them to start him off as the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Then I as much as I wanted them to take Hutchinson, as good as he would be playing alongside Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence has got to be the guy there. It's a pass first league. And then that being said, if he's there, he stays in Michigan. I think Aiden Hutchinson will go to Detroit. Following that, Kayvon Thibodeau is my best player in the draft. The Texans have, severely needed to replace J.J. Watt. Even when he was still there, he was injury prone. He was not always on the field. They need that excellent pass rusher. There's no Clowney there anymore either, obviously. They needed to go Thibodeau. I think he'll be a vocal presence in the locker room, and he's a great leader. And here's where I start to get shaky a little bit, Jerk, because in true real life, if they're here at 4 and these are the first 3 players off the board, I'm not sure the Jets stay at this pick. But I wanted to do true to form, no trades, really pick for each one. And to me, the player that would have the biggest impact on the Jets at this point would be a cornerback like Ahmad Gardner. He's the best cornerback in my mind in the draft. Hasn't given up a single touchdown in college. He did play at Cincinnati, so his level of competition wasn't say as high as like a Derek Stingley. But Stingley has not been healthy, and I truly think for all his talk and bravado, gotta get some sauce. And then that being said, the other team in New York, the last of my first 5 picks, has had line issues for years and years now. They have the highest paid wide receiver room in the NFL. And I think they were 18th in touchdowns last year.
Yeah, it was a very low number.
It can't happen. So, part of it is on Daniel Jones, but part of it is that the fact that they can't get that run game going. They can't keep him protected. The line has been a mess for a long, long time now. Since they signed Solder, actually before they signed Solder, because that's the reason they signed him. So they absolutely need to get another guy on the line. Andrew Thomas really took a step forward this year, and Evan Neal is a guy that can play on both sides of the line wherever you need him at tackle. I don't believe he's got any inside experience, but again, you need 2 tackles, and I think that would be an excellent move for them. finally get Saquon running both ways, give him a little bit of extra protection. I believe he was in the bottom 5 in yards before contact
Yeah.
because he was getting hit behind the line of scrimmage almost every play. And he still had a little bit of resurgence last year. I think Saquon's got some juice in the tank. We'll see what happens, but they're really going to need to protect him.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think those are 5 really good picks right there, and I think your logic is sound for all of them. I think for the Jaguars, ultimately the way the first couple picks are going to go depends on what they do. Because, like you said, and we've spoken about this before, actually, in private and other conversations, the fact that a lot of people think that Aiden Hutchinson is actually going to be the guy that Jacksonville takes just because he's the safe pick. I think we've said this before. I think a lot of people believe this as fact. Aiden Hutchinson is that quote unquote really safe high pick in this draft where the base is extremely high of what he could do. The ceiling and the potential is the biggest question. And to pick a guy like that number 1 overall is really intriguing because, what could that do for you? It could give you a guy that does maybe last 6, 7, 8, 9 years in the league. I think, what's his name? Eric Fisher for the Kansas City Chiefs way back when the Chiefs had that number 1 overall pick. Remember, that draft class was, you want to talk about having 0 number 1 prospects coming into it. That was the definition. They pick a guy who was on the team up until last season, really. So I think
He was on the team for a long time.
Yeah, he was on the team for a long time. And I think Aiden Hutchinson is that kind of player. Obviously, more stats-wise, it'll be more important because, not an offensive lineman. You can actually count stats for the defensive guys. But Aiden Hutchinson seems to be the guy. But I don't disagree with Ikem Ekwonu at all. I think he's very tantalizing to be the number 1 pick potentially. I think all 5 of these guys in some way, shape, or form, like if Jacksonville ends up picking them number 1, will raise more eyebrows on some of these than most. But I think all 5 of these guys have the talent in this draft class to make that combo. And then, of course, Hutchinson, I think him to Detroit just makes sense. Keep him in the state. Doesn't have to go that far. Switching a little bit, switching the area code just a touch. But him going over to Michigan, going over to Detroit from Michigan would be big. Kayvon Thibodeau, I think no matter where he goes, I think he can make an impact. I think a lot of people are starting to question him for some reason. I don't understand why. And then Sauce Gardner, to me, it's him or Trayvon Walker. I constantly flip-flop between the two of them day by day on who the Jets could pick 4th overall. I don't think you're losing if you pick either guy. And Evan Neal for the Giants, I think we agree either at 5 or 7 they need an offensive lineman, 1,000%. So, that being said, Justin.
Well, I will add one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
If, in fact, they do not take Ekwonu with the number 1 overall, I think he falls. I would say that the Ahmad Gardner falls also, and the Jets go with Ekwonu the line.
Well, that is a very interesting way of looking at it. And totally not the path that I went with my first 5 picks. So these picks now, of course, like I said, we're going to be alternating. These are my 5 picks ultimately. Now, I know a lot of people are looking at number 1 with the biggest thing. I will get to number 1 momentarily. I'm actually going to work, not backwards here. So like I said, I agree with the mindset that to me, Aiden Hutchinson ain't number 1 overall. I think it makes sense for him to go number 2. He's really pro ready. I think Detroit needs a guy like him. At number 2 overall, I think you need a guy who is going to make an instant impact. I think Aiden Hutchinson would be the big instant impact. Penei Sewell, I don't doubt is, fantastically talented, being a left tackle. He was the most pro ready. Now let's get down to the defensive side of things. That offensive line is looking a little bit better in Detroit. The Lions offensive line actually ain't that bad. So now let's strengthen that defense a little bit. Let's add some more to it. Let's go Aiden Hutchinson. Evan Neal at 3. I know a lot of people are going to look at it and question. It's not because I think he's better than Ikem Ekwonu. It's because Laramie Tunsil is in Houston. Now, for a while, I actually thought that Laramie Tunsil could potentially find his way out because I believed I had heard maybe early in the offseason there was some friction there. But recent reports are saying that things have been smoothed out. Him and Nick Caserio, it's a lot better. The situation is more to his liking. So it looks like if everything is to believe, then Laramie Tunsil is going to remain in Houston, then I think they'll run with Evan Neal to put on the right side because I think everything that I've seen from Evan Neal, he's talented, but I think a lot of people would prefer if he could be your right tackle. It makes sense. Tunsil on the left, Neal on the right, Davis Mills, you give him the best chance in the world to stand upright. Should he be the quarterback of the future? Probably. But if they're going to run with him as the quarterback, why not give him the best opportunity to make sure he stands upright, Justin? At number 4, I still have Sauce Gardner. Again, I think the Jets, I know he's been injured, and maybe this could play a role, but I think they'll take the chance with Elijah Vera Tucker and Mekhi Becton still being the top 2 offensive linemen on that team. And I think they need to go defense with at least one of these top 10 picks. I know some people are kind of turned off by the idea of a corner at 4th overall, but like you said, you put it all out there. Sauce Gardner could be the guy that really leads that defense. I'm not going to put expectations on him, but I think he could be really great for the defense. And then because of the way I have it shaping up, Ikem Ekwonu goes to number 5. Giants, you see him there, you waste no time, you hand in the card right away. The only reason that pick won't be selected if Ekwono's still on the board is because they got to milk it for the television. We know immediately if
Every
Ekwono's
pick
still on the
needs to
board.
take 15 minutes.
Exactly.
That's just ratings.
And we need to know all their life stories, no matter.
God, can you imagine? It's going to be 30 minutes of New York's pick that with no picks. You're going to get one in the 30 minutes. It's going to be like, oh
Oh, back to back picks, the fourth pick and the fifth pick. It's just going to be all conversation. Oh my goodness. Have fun at the draft, ladies and gentlemen. Now,
my God.
let me circle back to the number 1 overall pick. Justin, do you know who the general manager is for the Jacksonville Jaguars off the top of your head? I'm sure you do, but just remind the people.
I believe it is Trent Baalke.
Ding, 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 my good man. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because remember, Trent Baalke was the general manager for 6 years in San Francisco. Now, I would like to share to you, Justin, the 6 first-round picks. I'm not going to go through the whole draft because it ain't pretty. But let me just share to you at least the 6 first-round picks that he has made in his career. 2011, Aldon Smith. Really good pick. I can't deny it. Now, immediately, eventually fell off. But at the time, when he was actually able to play, and,
When he was on the field. Yeah.
screwing up on the field, screwing up off the field, amazing pick. 2012, AJ Jenkins. Ooh. Not great. 2013, Eric Reed. Really good safety, to be fair. I actually did like Eric Reed for a while. They picked him 18th overall. Good defensive back for a while. Played in Carolina for a little bit. Hasn't played in a bit, which I don't think is due to talent. I think he's talented enough. I think there are some other external factors going into that, but we're not going to get into that.
Didn't he just sign a contract?
Did he?
Reed? I believe so.
No, wasn't that Justin Reed on Kansas City? Or did Eric Reed also just sign?
No, I thought Eric Reed signed too. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Keep going.
Well, we researched that. We move on. 2014, another defensive back, Jimmy Ward. Very good starter for the San Francisco 49ers. I can't deny that. 2015, Eric Armstead. 2016, DeForest Buckner. What does Trent Baalke like to do with these first-round picks? He likes going defense. Now, to be fair, he has not had the number 1 overall pick with a franchise potential tackle there. I will give that to you. But at the same time, I cannot believe in my mind that he would be able to resist the temptation of going with Kayvon Thibodeau with his first overall pick. I just think from that perspective, I can see it making sense in his mind specifically because the mind of Trent Baalke, let's just say you don't want to be stuck in that mind. There are 2 minds in sports that you don't want to be stuck in throughout a majority of your time. Kyrie Irving in the NBA, Trent Baalke in the NFL. And if you want to expand to other sports, I actually don't know who would be from Major League Baseball, probably Rob Manfred, and probably Gary Bettman in the NHL because, it'd be interesting to see the nothingness in Manfred and the pure scumbagness in Gary Bettman's minds. Moving on. Ultimately, this is how my top 5 shapes up. I think the pass rusher that has all the potential in the world, Baalke, I think, would take a risk there. If there's a GM that I think would take the risk based off of his draft history, I think it would be him. Aiden Hutchinson, the safe pick. Evan Neal, to me, solidifying the offensive line. Again, it's not because I think he's better than Ekwono. Ekwono's my number 1 tackle, but I think they'll go with him. Sauce Gardner at the Jets, I just think it makes sense. And then Ekwono, again, right away the card's going to be given. We're going to take 20 minutes because it's the Giants on draft night, but it'll be an immediate selection. What do you think? Because I know it's a little bit different. I know you had mentioned Ekwono. You think of it, but I think this could conceivably be a way it shapes out.
I mean, for sure. I listen. Kayvon Thibodeau was the number 1 guy in the draft coming into the year. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson has overtaken him in recent times. Sauce Gardner is someone that has come up more for his play throughout the year. His combine was solid. He's a legitimate shutdown corner, I think. It's interesting because, I feel like a lot of people have Detroit going defense. I still think it's very possible for them to go offensive tackle. I mean, you and I both have the same pick, so I'm not going to knock you for it. I do think Aiden Hutchinson will be an excellent fit there, but you got to start 5 offensive linemen. And if you're not happy with one of those positions, you have the pick of the litter at number 2, because I'm not sure if Jacksonville will go offensive line, although I think they should.
Right.
I want to just comment on your comment about Sauce Gardner, about how people aren't happy with a cornerback that high. Cornerback is a premium position. If you have a guy that works out and can shut down the field on that side, like people think Ahmad Gardner might be able to, the things it does for your defense is unimaginable. Because I as a Jets fan, I have to go back every time to when the Jets had Darrelle Revis, and they literally they left him on an island. It was Revis Island, and you had 3 or 4 secondary players on the other side of the field. You couldn't throw anywhere because Revis literally had half the field covered, and then the rest of the guys could rush the passer, and they were a top defense for a very long time. If you can really hit on that and you're sure that you're going to get that at number 4, I don't care how low it is. I would take it at number 1 if he was the best player in the draft. The position shouldn't matter if he's going to have that kind of impact. A lot of people are saying that it's possible. Sauce Gardner gave up 0 touchdowns in single coverage. He had a passer rating of like 23 in college against some good teams. People forget they played Alabama in the college football playoffs. Did he give up a touchdown there? No, he played against some of the best receivers in the country. I think that would be an excellent pick, and you can't knock it at number 4. And I happen to think Ekwonu is the best tackle just because of his versatility. I think he'd be an excellent fit for the Giants. The only reason I have him taking Neal is because Neal is that second guy. He might be a better true left tackle, but he's played left and right. He's got the versatility in there, and the Giants need that tackle. I think it's a good fit. No matter which way they go, I don't think they can lose if they get Neal or Ekwonu.
Absolutely. And hey, we know this. Alabama, they produce offensive linemen. There's no doubt about that. They produce offensive linemen. So now let's switch over.
Though. Rick would tell you they produce offensive linemen if the Jets don't draft them.
Accurate point. Let's move on to the next.
There,
trust me. On my second Jets pick, heavy Rick vibes will be felt from this distance. I promise you that. Let's move on to your second set of selections. Now we have 6 through 10 here. Justin, I will let you go through pick by pick on what we have. Some interesting selections here, actually. A couple I definitely agree with. But let's go with your picks, starting with, I think, the most intriguing, who the Panthers quarterback will be.
Yeah, I took Malik Willis there. I think that Matt Rule is looking for a big playmaker. He's not necessarily – I don't think he's going to go with the safest quarterback in this draft, which would probably be Kenny Pickett, who's got the all-around skill. Malik Willis has that arm talent that you can't teach. He's going to be hitting guys left and right. He makes these amazing throws downfield. The Panthers are doing their best to rework their line, which I think that they've greatly improved, especially when they get CMC back. If they can keep him healthy, it'll keep the pressure off a rookie quarterback. They have guys who are the deep threat, and he needs a quarterback. This is a make or break year for Matt Rule and that Panthers staff, and Sam Darnold's not going to cut it. I like Sam Darnold. I really was hoping he'd have success in Carolina. He started out okay, but his stats were padded by a couple of great rushing attacks. And again, when you have Christian McCaffrey there, it masks a lot of things. As soon as he went down, Sam Darnold was exposed, and they weren't clicking offensively. So that being said, I have him taking Malik Willis. I think Mike Tomlin is here punching air because I think he would like to have gotten Malik Willis, but no trades in this mock draft. So unless you're trading up to 4 or 5, you're not getting Malik Willis because the Matt Rule is going to snag him up. 7, I went Trayvon Walker. I think it's a guy that's gone up. He's been rising up draft boards since the combine. He's an athletic freak. He had a great year last year. A lot of people are a little worried about I believe he was a one and done guy. He didn't really have the production the first year at Georgia, but Trayvon Walker is a hell of a pass rusher, and certain teams just happen to be able to really develop certain positions through the years. Like if you think about the Cowboys, for some reason they always have at least one really good receiver, and the Giants, to me, growing up in New York, they always had one good pass rusher throughout the years, whether it was Strahan, OCU Manura. They just always had someone on the defensive line that could get after the quarterback. And I think Trayvon Walker will fit that bill really well. I think he could be the next great Giant defensive lineman. Derek Stingley, I had a little trouble with this pick because I think at this point he was the best cornerback on the draft. I'm worried. I'm worried about that injury. He hasn't been able to stay healthy in, I believe, 2 years. I think if it works out, it'll be a steal for Atlanta. If they could really get the full potential of Derek Stingley Jr. out there, he would be an excellent pick for them. They need the help in the secondary. They've had defensive woes for a long time now. I believe since they've been to the Super Bowl. And I think he'd be a great fit there. Seattle's a wild card, man. I don't know about you. I have no idea what they're doing up there. But my inkling is that they will be preparing for next year. This is already a white towel situation. They get rid of Russell Westbrook. They're going to have to retool that defense. They're paying two safeties $100 million combined, and they're going to need to retool that offensive line. And the way you do that is you start from the tackle position, and then you build a team from the line out. If they want to have a rookie quarterback there next year, they're going to need to protect him. Charles Cross was the way to go. And then Jermaine Johnson, another athletic freak. The Jets, I almost went interior defensive lineman here, and I was very tempted to take Drake London. I unfortunately for Rick, I'm a big Drake London guy. He's someone that's grown on me as the draft process has gone on. I think he's an excellent scheme fit for the Jets. He's a guy that can go over the top. He's a guy that can stack the box. He's not going to be a breakaway receiver, but they have that in Elijah Moore. I think Jermaine Johnson would be an excellent fit and someone that they could develop on the edge. He's a guy who had a big sack total last year at Florida State once he left Georgia, and I think that's something they need. They're going to need him to play across from. Oh my God, I'm going to blank on a Jets player now, and I'm going to be furious with myself. Who they signed last year from the Bengals, Jurg, you remember?
Lawson?
Yes, they need someone to play on the other side of the line from Lawson.
That was my trivia with W this week, yeah.
Jermaine Johnson can fit that bill.
Again, I definitely Malik Willis is. I think it's almost guaranteed now that Carolina is going to go quarterback at 6. I think there is pressure from Dave Tepper just a touch. Matt Rule got an expensive contract, so I don't think this is necessarily a hot seat season unless things just completely fall apart. But I think quarterback has to be the way to go if you are the Carolina Panthers. I think for the organization, it makes sense. This is the time where they're going to go quarterback. Trayvon Walker, I agree. I think he's going to one of the 2 New York teams, honestly. I think he's either going to the Jets or he's going to the Giants. It almost feels like destiny at this point, well, all things considered. Derek Stingley to Atlanta is interesting. You talk about Seattle being a wild card. I think Atlanta's a wild card because we just don't know what they're going to do here. It is entirely possible, Justin, they could go with quarterback as well. And I think that's what makes things interesting is the fact that they have the perfect stopgap. His middle name should be Stopgap, Marcus Mariota, because that feels like a guy who's the perfect go-between for a quarterback, for a young QB. And Charles Cross makes sense.
I will say with Atlanta, I don't think they're going to go quarterback this year. I think the fact that they signed Mariota is a very clear signal that they don't like any of the quarterbacks this year, that they are waiting for next year. It's very possible they go offensive line in this situation as well, but I don't, or even receiver, because they're going to be light at receiver now all of a sudden. Right. A team that's been stacked at receiver for a long time, since they had Roddy White back in the day, and now they're going to be barren at receiver.
Atlanta, I'm just saying, Osiris Mitchell in the USFL, the kid can ball. I'm just saying. I saw a highlight of him making a one-hand catch. I'm telling you, if I was Atlanta, I'm signing that kid right now. I'm taking him off his team. I'm sorry, USFL. I'm sorry, but I need that kid on my team. But my fantasies aside of what I wish for, young players to actually succeed. No, I definitely agree. I think Atlanta's a wild card. It could be. I heard this earlier in the week, actually. It could be the Pittsburgh Steelers strategy where they signed Trubisky to a 2-year deal for a reason. Maybe they just let it ride out with Trubisky for 2 years. Same thing with Atlanta, because I believe Mariota was signed to a 2-year deal as well. They could just let it rock for 2 years and see how it goes. So that could be an entirely real possibility and build up the team. Speaking of building up a team, I'm 100% with you. I think Charles Cross has been the most a lot of mocks that I've seen or been a part of. I think Charles Cross has been the consistent pick. I think it just makes sense. They've had offensive line issues for so long, Justin. We've referenced it so many times at this point. It's if you play a drinking game with our podcast, take a shot every single time you hear us talk about the Max Unger deal that Seattle made.
Just Seattle offensive line in general. You'll be hammered.
Oh my God. So Charles Cross makes sense. Jermaine Johnson, I think, is interesting. Jermaine Johnson, to me, I think is a bit of an enigma where I think he could go as high as 10. He could fall into the 20s, I think. And it's not because he's bad. It's not because anything with talent or character. I just think it really depends on how the needs of the draft go team by team. And again, we're going with no trades in this mock that we do. In real life, teams could trade up. They get other positions. They don't necessarily trade for a defensive end. He could fall down. He gets into the second half of the draft. A lot of teams are going to be chomping at the bit to pick a guy like that. So I personally, I really like that selection there. I don't blame it at all for the Jets. Now, my Jet selection, to say the very least, is going to be interesting. You see it on the screen right there. We'll get to the other 4. Here's why. Here's why I went with Jameson Williams, Justin. Number 1, to get a reaction out of Rick. Au contraire, I said we have the name Chaos in the name for a reason. If you thought I was going to do this and not do this to specifically piss off my own co-host, you'd be dead wrong. Now, past that, Jameson Williams is supremely talented. I'm saying this not because I present myself as a foremost college sports expert, especially college football. I say this from every single person that I know that knows sports. If Jameson Williams had not torn his ACL, he would most likely be a top 10, 12 pick in this draft. Guaranteed lock it.
He'd be the number 1 receiver on the board.
He would be miles away the number 1 receiver. All due respect to Drake London, Garrett Wilson, but Jameson Williams would be the bona fide number 1 guy. Now, why do I have him at the Jets? Because I think Zach Wilson, just at the end of the day, needs talent around him. Now, I know Jameson Williams is coming off an injury, but I have a couple counterpoints to that. Number 1, torn ACLs are not as bad injuries anymore. We have seen the medical science behind it. These guys are coming back. Guys are coming back from torn ACLs in college even, continuing to play in college because sometimes they're not able to get out right away, and they're able to come back. Jameson Williams, to me, and especially, he's going from Alabama to a professional football team medical staff. Granted, you can make as many Jets jokes as you want. It is still a professional football team. He's going from college football's elite medical program that Nick Saban, say what you will about him, he cares about his players. He makes sure his guys are well, especially because he understands that they are going to make money in the pros. James Williams going from that to now the Jets. He's going to be fine. Even a couple weeks back, Justin, there was an article saying how he was already weeks ahead of his process. He was already with a boot or cast ready to go without crutches. Like, this is a kid who's driven. He's absolutely motivated. I absolutely love him. Like, I think the tape speaks for itself. I know it's a risk, and I know for one specific person, that's not a university he wants to see next to the player being drafted. But I think Jameson Williams, there's a little bit of risk in it, but I think the reward of what it could do for Zach Wilson, you get Zach Wilson with Jameson Williams and Elijah Moore and who's the big body guy? Corey Davis. That's not bad. That could you always improve? Yes. But that's not bad to me to take. Again, I know it's an injury risk, and he may not even be ready to play the first 2 to 4 weeks of the season. But when you do get him in the lineup, when he's feeling good, I think he can really make an impact. That's why I personally have him going to the Jets. Before I get to the rest, Justin, I'll let you say your piece. And then I'm pre-booking time next week to start the show. Rick immediately can go into this.
If we were worried about what Rick's review would be, it will now be on a Jameson Williams pick in Jurg's draft. But listen, you're right. If he's healthy, if this ACL didn't happen, he's easily the number 1 receiver in the draft. And we're talking about the Jets taking him at 4. We are. We just are. Because they didn't get the draft trade. They didn't get the trade for the big receiver. They know it's a need. They need a number 1 guy. I think Elijah Moore could be a fringe number 1 guy. Let's see if he can stay healthy. But even if that's the case, they still need the depth. And Corey Davis is not the number 1 guy there. So, yeah, if he's healthy and this guy can be what everyone thinks he is, there's nothing wrong with this pick. It should thrive, and it should really, realistically, what it would put the pressure on Zach Wilson to really take a step forward this year, because that's what they need him to do. They need him to move forward as the number 1 guy and as the guy that they think the Jets think that he could be to help them in the future. Yeah. I got no issues with it, especially let's see what his medicals are in 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6. Like, it will be the one thing you have to constantly keep up with.
Well, you can't wait. You can't wait 4 weeks, Jurg. You got to know what his medicals are in 2 weeks.
Fair, I guess fair enough. Who knows? Maybe if he somehow falls to Dallas, Jerry Jones is going to put a contract clause in there when it comes to injuries as well, and just completely screw himself out of first round pick, just like he does with his players. Now, moving on to the rest of the picks. And again, Jameson Williams, I feel like we both agree, supremely talented. I think he can immediately make an impact. I'm not going to say the comparison that a lot of people have as his pro comp, because I just don't think it's fair to compare these young wide receivers or young players coming out in general to like pros who have perfected their craft. But Jameson Williams has a chance to be one of those guys. He perfects his craft. It's going to be special. It's going to be amazing. I'm just saying. Let's go. So, like I said, 7 and 9. I'm on the same wavelength as you. Not much else I want to say. Trayvon Walker has shot up the boards. He has shown himself to be just a ferocious pass rusher. I think he get after the quarterback. He's a guy that's going to help make that defensive line. You said it yourself, Justin, from Michael Strahan to OC and Justin Tuck, Jason Pierre-Paul there. And even not as great as those guys, but Leonard Williams has had some flashes here and there. Just get another pass rusher in there. It's going to be real good.
I heard a stat. Leonard Williams has 18 sacks in the last 2 years for the Giants. That's not bad.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not saying it's bad, but just like another guy there to just help out that defense. Remember, it's front fours that have always led the Giants to their success. And if they want to try to get back to that, let's just add to that.
If you're getting 9 sacks from the middle and add some guy like Trayvon Walker, your sack total should explode, in theory.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. In theory, and to be fair, all this is in theory. But I got Trayvon Walker. These Georgia boys, they know how to make defensive players. He's going to be the one drafted here. And again, I agree. Charles Cross should go to Seattle. Just hit a reset button. Again, Seattle offensive lineman. I'm not going to deliberate too much more. The pick speaks for itself. Here are my two differentiations. I think, like I said, it could be so different with what Atlanta could do. Who knows? Kyle Hamilton. Now, this may not be the final roster. I think maybe there are injuries that I didn't see on the website that I looked at, but their depth chart, their two starting safeties that I saw, at least on ESPN's website today, are like 28, 29, 30 above. They need youth in the defensive backfield to go along with, I believe, AJ Terrell is their number one corner. Yeah. And shout out to AJ Terrell, by the way. A lot of people criticize that pick. He's been really good in Atlanta. So let's add another defensive back there. Let's add another defensive back. I think Kyle Hamilton just helps. Again, this was done specifically for maybe, need versus BPA, but let's be real here. Kyle Hamilton, he's a really, really good, talented player. To him, for safety to be your need, and Kyle Hamilton is the player that's on the board, you're not overdrafting him. If anything, getting him at number 8, I think a lot of people would think that's really great value for a guy like that and what he could provide to you. Now, Kenny Pickett. We both agree with quarterback. Kenny Pickett. This is why I think between Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis, if you have a preference between either or, I'm not going to disagree with you. I think because this is not as profound as a QB class as normal, you can make an argument. Here's why ultimately, Justin, I'm running with Kenny Pickett as my pick overall at 6. And it stems from the first couple of paragraphs in this one article. And it reads as such on ESPN's website. On April 9th, 2016, the spring before his senior season at Ocean Township High School in Oakhurst, New Jersey, quarterback Kenny Pickett tweeted, "Honored to say that I have committed to Temple University." Along with that tweet, there are a few pictures, including one with a 3-star quarterback wearing a Temple jersey with the number 2 next to then Owls head coach Mike Rule, who now coaches the Carolina Panthers. I got to see practice, etc. He was excited. This is the 4th paragraph. Pickett never made it to Temple. His profile grew during a stellar senior season, and he received larger offers to more established programs. One was the University of Pittsburgh, where he went on to become a top NFL prospect during his 5 years. Sometimes, Justin, at the end of the day, it's about who you know the most about. And Matt Rule wanted Kenny Pickett a long time ago, didn't get Kenny Pickett, not because Kenny Pickett didn't like Matt Rule, just because he got bigger offers. And he went to Pittsburgh. This is Matt Rule's chance. He wanted him all those years ago. I don't think there's anything you could show me about last season that makes me think that Matt Rule wouldn't want him again. Give me Kenny Pickett at the 6th overall pick with the Carolina Panthers. It just makes sense. I think it's bound to happen. Again, not to say that Malik Willis wouldn't get some attention. I definitely think those two are getting all the attention of the Carolina Panthers at 6 overall. I just think it's going to run with Kenny Pickett at the end of the day. I think Tepper's going to pressure them. I think Matt Rule's going to go with a guy that he's wanted, he coveted, he lost out on, and he gets it back. And you know what they say, Justin? You sometimes you need to let something go, and it'll come right back to you. And that's what Kenny Pickett is for Matt Rule. He lost him, but now he regains him.
Well, that's what Sam Darnold was for Matt Rule too. If you remember, he was a coaching staff away from getting that Jets job, and he was apparently the quarterback that he coveted as well. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I think Kenny Pickett is certainly the safer pick at quarterback. He's definitely got the higher floor than Malik Willis, but there's just something about his arm talent, the throws he made on his pro day that he's got people talking. And again, if there's a real quarterback pick that early, it might be because there's a trade. A lot of these teams, but the issue is the reason that I don't necessarily think that's going to happen is it's an expensive price to pay to trade up that far for a quarterback class that people aren't in love with. So unless you really think that the guy is here, which this reminds me more of a Haskins-Jones quarterback draft than it does, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson quarterback draft. It's not that deep. There's a guy, maybe you can hit on him, but I don't necessarily see it. So well, it'll be interesting to see what Carolina does. They could very well just go offensive lineman or address another need and say, hey, we'll sit pat and maybe I'll take my chances of having a job next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned the price when it comes to trading up for a starting quarterback. The price is especially high when the risk is high, and that's what this year's draft class is. So I just don't think it's in the best interest for these teams to just go after quarterbacks willy nilly, especially trading up. I think if a team trades up, it's because it's next level confidence, and if you got that confidence, I mean, hey, more power to you in that situation. Justin, let's continue here with your next selection of picks. We have 11 through 15, Washington, Minnesota, Houston, Baltimore, and Philadelphia. Let's run through. We got a couple NFC East teams in there. We got a team that wanted to make the playoffs, that was close to making the playoffs last year, just missed out due to quarterback injury in Baltimore. Got the Eagles, who made that surprising playoff run. We got some good teams in here, man, that have playoff aspirations. Let's see what is the mindset for these team selections.
So, at first, I got to talk about Kyle Hamilton. I have him as one of the top 5 players in my draft. He's a safety, so he's not one of those glamour positions, so it falls. But he's easily deserves to be a top 10 pick. I don't have him falling much farther outside of that. Washington has needed help in their secondary for a long time, and I think that you're almost kind of seeing the defensive linemen get punished a little bit. I know Chase Young was injured last year, but their sack numbers were disappointing last year. They didn't get after the quarterback. The teams just sat in pass pro and tossed the ball over the top time and time again against the Washington football team. And now that they're the Washington Commanders, they need to command a little bit more respect in that secondary. And I think Kyle Hamilton, off the top of my head, just like that, I think they need Kyle Hamilton to really come in there and start locking down that defense as far as the secondary is concerned. George Karlaftis, I struggled a little bit. I thought maybe cornerback here. I was thinking maybe Trent McDuffie. I was thinking maybe they reach for another corner. They were second in the league last year in sacks, and I think Karlaftis is a monster. A lot of people have him falling as the as the mock drafts come out, but I think if you can have him as a true pass rusher, you put him on the other side of Daniil Hunter, and they are going to have a lot of quarterbacks in agony next year. And that's really what they need, especially when they're playing guys like Aaron Rodgers, whose line has disappeared, who has no receivers, a rookie quarterback in Justin Fields. They have Penei Sewell now in Detroit, so the sacks are a little bit harder to come by. If you really want to make the playoffs this year, as you were, I think they lost 7 games last year by one score. They need to really strengthen their strengths and focus on that because they're not a bad team overall. Their weak spots aren't all that weak. So if they could really get after the quarterback with a guy like Karlaftis, I'd take that 10 out of 10 times. Houston is rough for me. I know that I had them taking Thibodeau, I believe, in the first round. But listen, they need more than that. And with a young quarterback there, they are going to need a target. I know they re-signed Brandon Cooks. Garrett Wilson, to me, is one of those toss-up top wide receivers in the draft. He's a deep threat. He'll thrive there. I think that he would be a great fit. And then Drake London, I think, would be the kind of receiver that Lamar Jackson has never played with. It's what they tried to do when they signed Des Bryant, but Des Bryant was no longer Des Bryant. Like I said, I think he's an excellent scheme fit for the Jets. Would I be mad if he went at 10? Absolutely not. But if you stack him with Hollywood Brown and I'm blanking on names today. Who's a tight end, Jerry?
Mark Andrews. But also they have
Andrews.
Rashad Bateman from last year.
Yeah, but Rashad Bateman, he was all right last year, but those are guys that'll stretch the field. Right. Drake London's the kind of guy that's going to go over the top and get it. He'll stack receivers. You don't know which way he's going. He can go over the middle and go up high. He'll be a big end zone target that you could throw fades to. And it's that guy that they've never really given Lamar Jackson. So it'll be tough to cover for those secondaries. They're really going to have to get after him, and sacking Lamar Jackson is not the way. You have to make sure you contain him and make sure he can't get connected to his targets. Taking a guy like Drake London would be an excellent move for the Ravens. I did also have them looking at the interior defensive lineman from Georgia. I had him looking at both, actually. But listen, you got to go offense. You got to do what you can to protect Lamar Jackson, and making the defense sit on his heels and lessening the pass rush will certainly help that. And then Trent McDuffie, the Eagles need a cornerback. They seem like they need one every year. I thought about going 3 straight receivers here, Jared. I did. They'd be the first team in a long time to take a receiver as a first round pick in 3 straight drafts, but I think they need someone to play on the opposite side of Devontae Smith. And I was thinking Olave, I was thinking Treylon Burks, but I figured, you know what? There's not really a great offensive team anymore in the NFC East. And I know what I'm saying. And I know everyone's saying, what about the Cowboys? Without Amari Cooper and Lyle Collins, their running back was 18th in the league in rush yards last year.
Sounds about
I
right.
believe after getting paid. And they just lost another one of their starting linemen and a starting receiver. I got the Eagles in first place in this division this year, by the way. Just throwing that out there for future episodes.
Ooh.
I think the Cowboys have made some serious mistakes this offseason.
Right.
They've lost some serious talent. And with a move like drafting Trent McDuffie to lock down some of those receivers in the NFC least, they could seriously take a step forward. And now we're going to have some serious questions about, is Jalen Hurts the guy there?
Right. Absolutely. It's going to be make or break soon. We're talking about guys that got to prove themselves. Some of these quarterbacks, man, if their teams make the right moves, it's like, all right, you got to show us something here, because the next year or two, especially next year, is a quarterback draft class. Who knows what it is 2-3 years from now as well. So time is ticking for some of these young quarterbacks. I see these picks. I can't necessarily disagree. I think a lot of my picks are in a very similar vein to yours, actually. So I'm going to not waste any more time. Let's just get to the picks that I made compared to yours. So in a very similar way, I have 4 of the same 5 players that you do.
Very good. We are very similar all the way through. We've been fairly similar.
Yeah, we have.
Impressive.
So it's very interesting because straight up, first off, I completely forgot about Justin's like full group of guys. We actually had to reload a couple things before this, technical difficulties and all, ladies and gentlemen. So Justin had to actually remind me to make sure we could get his image up of like who he got. So I had zero intel coming in. I'm like, okay, what the heck are we doing here? So this is just funny. But very similar way for you. I'm going to start with the Minnesota Vikings and the Eagles right away, because again, we hit on the same picks for those two. I think Karlaftis, I agree, talented pass rusher in this class. I think he's been underrated because of the main guys that are at the top. I think he could be really talented. And I think Big Ten kid, went to Purdue, has been to Minnesota, has played in Minnesota, has fought against Minnesota, go Gophers, row the boat, Sky U-Ma and all that, stuff. But, why not get a guy that's used to playing in the cold, that's used to going after quarterbacks and trying his best, add to that defensive pass rush, which, honestly, yes, the pass rush on base numbers was impressive last year, but like Daniil Hunter underperformed. A couple guys on that line, they underperformed. Why not add a little bit of youth there? I do generally agree. If Derek Stingley is still there at 12, or maybe even Kyle Hamilton potentially, I think they'll probably go with one of those two, because I think they need some youth desperately in that defensive backfield. More youth, I should say, because they have some young players there, but not all of them, because Pat Pete's there, Harrison Smith. But I think in a case like this where they're probably top 2 defensive back options are off the board, again, I don't mind Trent McDuffie personally, but I don't think they would necessarily go with him. I got to go with Karlaftis and what he could do along the defensive line. And same thing, Trent McDuffie. We talk about needing another wide receiver opposite of Devontae Adams. They need another corner opposite of Big Play Slay. All due respect, again, Darius Big Play Slay's been great ever since he got to Philly. How blessed he was to get out of the Detroit Lions situation way back when it was Matt Patricia, old pencil behind the ear as if he was a smart guy shtick. But he's played great, but he's not getting any younger. He's still good, but why not get a young corner in there? I think Trent McDuffie's done a very good thing in terms of being a very good coverage corner, being able to bat down passes, high pass deflections. I think he's a very talented kid. Obviously, all that being said, part of the reason why Vikings miss out is because I have Washington going after Derek Stingley Jr. Again, same vein as you. They lack the talent in the defensive backfield on a year-by-year basis. It's always something that's going wrong, and when the pass rush suffered as much as it did last year for them, your defensive backfield is going to suffer even more because they don't have that shutdown guy. Derek Stingley, we talked about, he's dealt with some injuries last 2 years, but the kid is still supremely talented, has a supremely high ceiling. If he had been healthy each of the last 2 years, he's probably a top 5 pick. And to me, that's not an overstatement, because his freshman year, a lot of people were touting him as a top 5 pick from his freshman year. So I think Derek Stingley Jr., is going to be a guy that a lot of people got to watch out for because I think he's another one of these guys. He can go at 5 or within the top 5, maybe. He just out of it, no, top 6, top 7. Maybe he does fall out of the top 10, but he ain't going to stay on there for long because he's going to go to a team that needs him. Washington needs him. Granted, they more so need safeties than corner, but because there's no definitive safety that you would take this high up, aside from Kyle Hamilton, I went with Stingley Jr. and the impact he could make. It gives you, to me, even more flexibility with the defensive backfield there. I think that's what you need. And then, honestly, the wide receivers, I just flip-flopped it. I got Garrett Wilson with Baltimore and Drake London with the Texans. To me, London is big, physical. He's essentially going to be what Will Fuller should have been in Houston, but he's actually hopefully going to stay healthy. He's going to be a massive red zone threat. He's going to be a guy that, like you say, you could just sky up and catch the ball out of guys. You have Brandon Cooks as the speed-based vertical threat. You have Drake London as the guy who he's just going to tower above everybody and just catch the ball. He's going to moss some people. Let's say that. And again, we're talking about helping Davis Mills. We both have big picks here to help out Davis Mills in each of our drafts. So hey, Houston, we're helping you out. We're giving you free advice here. So I have London going to Houston, and I have Garrett Wilson to Baltimore. Again, similar vein, I think Baltimore, the Lamar Jackson injury was tough, but the offensive line, I don't necessarily think maybe they could go O-line if a guy falls or there's still a name that they just won. They just maybe overdraft, quote unquote. I think they need to go after skill position. I don't think it's an issue taking a receiver in the first round 2 years in a row because I think Rashad Bateman started out the year a little bit injured last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that slowed him down. I think he'll be a little bit better, and just adding a guy like Garrett Wilson will help out. Give Lamar Jackson as many weapons possible to show if he really is improving as a passer, which I think he might slowly be. It's just he was hurt last season, the last quarter or so. Remember this Baltimore Ravens team, they were 8-4 or 8-5, and they completely fell off the map due to injury. They need to have Lamar healthy, and even if he gets dinged up again for hopefully just a game or two, backup quarterback comes in and you have all these weapons to throw to. It's not a bad thing to help set up your team in any case scenario.
Jerk, you're letting them off the hook too easy.
Am I?
Yeah, everyone remembers the 2-point conversion calls, man.
Well,
listen, they had their injury concerns, but don't let the Ravens off the hook.
Well, to be fair, also I'm also thinking of 2-point conversions and 4th down calls with the Chargers as well. That's another team that was a little bit too trigger happy when it came to that.
Yeah,
with the play calling,
might have cost them their seasons.
Oh yeah. We're actually really fast here, Justin, because of the way that this is shaped out, is the fact that the 16th overall pick is at the bottom of one column and the 17th overall pick is at the top of another. So a little bit of mismanagement. That's on me. We're just going to go over our 16th overall picks here really quick for the New Orleans Saints. I'm going to start with yours, Justin, really fast. We talked about quarterbacks. You got Kenny Pickett to the Saints. Let's talk about that. Why you say Saints are big reason why they made that trade, so they have 2 firsts. You're one of the people that believes one of those firsts is going for QB. And I think the mindset is that if that first round pick is on a QB, it's the guy that they want. So you have Kenny Pickett to NOLA.
So I took this symbolically because I think if they stay pat there, I don't necessarily know they take a quarterback here. I think that maybe Kenny Pickett might not be available. Maybe there's a team, because if Kenny Pickett is as popular with certain teams as everyone else says there is, he'll be traded up. I think that New Orleans will trade up with these 2 picks for a Kenny Pickett. But that being said, I if he's here, if they stay pat, I could see them going offensive lineman and going with my next pick in the same position, just for the sake of, hey, we missed it this year. We have a young coach who's starting his first year, and we'll figure it out next year. But I think Kenny Pickett, assuming that Malik Willis is gone, is the best quarterback left on the board. He's got the highest floor. He's a good pocket passer. His hands are so small, and I'm rooting for him at every chance I get because of his small hands. No, I don't think that matters. He's a good player. He's a good football player, and I think he would fit well in New Orleans.
I don't blame you at all. I think that is relatively the way that some people are going to think when it comes to that. I have Chris Olave as my guy, wide receiver, Ohio State. Main reason is because, again, this is a no-trade mock draft, and I think if the Saints, kind of like to what you said, I don't think necessarily that they wouldn't go after a quarterback with the second of the first. I just think they want to try to guarantee themselves getting a receiver because I think once we get to the midway point, I think we slowly start to see a range here where the Packers or the Chiefs, specifically those two teams, could trade up for a wide receiver if a couple big names are still out there. So I think it's dangerous territory when it comes to that. I think for the Saints, they've needed a number 2 receiver for so long behind Michael Thomas. You got to go after someone. Why not go after an Ohio State kid? You got the connection there, same university. Hopefully Michael Thomas will be able to be a good mentor. I'm not going to say anything about his character. I'm just saying I hope so. But you get him in there. He could help out with the offense. Maybe Michael Thomas can just be more on the outside now. Chris Olave could take over the slot, or Thomas stays inside. Olave could be that outside guy. I think he's more of the inside guy personally. But it's Dennis Allen and what he is maintaining of what is the New Orleans Saints offensive game from under Sean Payton. It makes it interesting, but I think they need to hit on receiver here. They cannot go another year without a real number 2 wide receiver, especially with the, Alvin Kamara. It's still kind of up in the air. He got into some trouble this offseason. I have to believe he's going to get suspended for at least a little bit.
For sure. I agree with you. I think he'll miss at least 4 or 5 games. But I have a question, Jerg.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that you think that they might go quarterback, but they want to lock down the receiver. Can I ask you, who did you take with the 19th pick?
You'll have to wait and see
because I think
our selections.
I think that we may have had similar thinking, because I, with my 19th pick, went wide receiver, thinking that they needed to lock down the wide receiver, but I figured that the quarterback position was a much more important position in my mind. So I went quarterback, wide receiver, and then you happened to go with your boy Malik Willis there at 19. So very, very similar thinking.
Indeed. And let's not waste any time. Let's not waste any time at all. Let's get to it. We have also a little bit of the show for the people. Didn't necessarily mean to show the slide, but hey, this is for all of you. Welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos. So let's continue. So again, skip it around because I tend to do that. I'm going to immediately go after the Saints pick. Like I said, we both have the same idea of the fact that New Orleans, they need to go after quarterback here with one of these 2 first, most likely, if that's what their aim is, unless they're just going to maintain Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, which, God, what a quarterback room that is. But Malik Willis, to me, it makes sense with him being the second quarterback available at this point. Again, I think in a no-trade scenario, this could potentially be likely and maybe someone could trade up with the Chargers and the Eagles. I'm not saying it's not possible, but to me, I don't think those 2 teams are going to worry about quarterback at all. I don't think this is the year for the Eagles to worry about the quarterback position. I think they're more so going to go after other pieces. So the Saints, I think it makes sense. Get Malik Willis in there. To me, he could be such a dynamic difference maker because he's so different from Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston on what he could do. He's got a good arm. He can really move with his feet. I think that's a big difference maker compared to a lot of the other quarterbacks. I think a lot of the quarterbacks are relatively mobile, but I think Malik Willis is really, really strong when it comes to moving and making plays happen with his legs. And again, what you could do, throwing the ball, you put him in a team that hopefully the offense is going to be very quarterback friendly. They try to maintain kind of what they had under Sean Payton. Will be a big deal. Dennis Allen, to me, I think there's a big chance for him as his second head coaching opportunity. Kind of his real first one. He was the Raiders coach for a little bit, but let's be real here. Those 2010s Raiders team, it's a lot of bad when it comes to the 2010s Oakland / Las Vegas Raiders eventually. So I think to me, it makes sense that they want to go after a quarterback here. Get young Malik Willis in there. It makes sense. Let's go to 17, back up real quick. Devontae White, just like you, I think we're also in a range where defensive players could potentially go on like a mini run here and there. We see like defensive guys in like 2-3 selections in a row. I think the Chargers, they've got all defense this entire offseason. Yes, I could see offensive tackle because they do need a right tackle there to help things out. But they've gone so defense heavy. I could see them doing it again. Just get another guy that could help with the run defense because that's what killed them at the very end of the season. And I think low-key in that division, you have Josh Jacobs with the Raiders. You have with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, maybe they'll finally use Clyde Edwards-Helaire more this season. Who knows? And I think the Denver Broncos, Javonte Williams, I think he could be poised for a big year too. So you have that. You need to be able to compete with the teams in your division. Just keep at it defensively. You get a guy like Devontae White. All he's got to worry about, make it so Khalil Mack and Bosa just got to go after the pass rusher. And then Sebastian Joseph Day and Devontae White, they could pick up some sacks here and there, but they are 100% there to stop the run. So I got Devontae White out of Georgia, another Georgia defensive lineman going in our first round. Will there be one more? Wait and see. And then at 18, I have Devin Lloyd, the linebacker out of Utah. I think Devin Lloyd and Nakobe Dean, the two of them. I think it's a take your pick at any point. I don't view them as like a big gap. Again, I just think it could depend on team fit, need, etc. To me, the Eagles need a linebacker. I'm personally going with Devin Lloyd here. I just think, first off, there's a success rate with linebackers named Devin the last couple of years. White, Devin Bush. So let's go with Devin Lloyd. But he was a stat sheet stuffer at Utah. He could really move around the field. He picked up some sacks, even, I think, an interception last season, if I'm not mistaken. Forced fumble or two, a lot of tackles. This kid can make plays happen potentially. Eagles need to solidify the linebacker core. That's arguably the weakest part of their defense. Because think about it. They have Darius Slay. We believe they're going to go after a corner. Pass rush, they still have Barnett. They brought back Fletcher Cox. They brought in Hassan Reddick, who, let's be real here, he's a specialty pass rusher. He had 9-10 sacks last season with the Carolina Panthers, something along those lines. They got some pass rush.
Resurgence for them. Yeah.
Exactly. They got some pass rush. We assume they're going to go after defensive backs. Let's solidify the linebacker core. Let's get a young player in there. They did add, because he got waived by the Chargers, Kazir White. Potentially could, be a good piece there. I actually personally think he could do something there, but let's just go after it. Devin Lloyd, waste zero time here. Let's do that. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, again, this is another selection. I think a lot of people are a fan of Tyler Linderbaum. Look, the Steelers, that offensive line played a lot better than we thought last season, but that's not an excuse to ignore it again. There's no tackles. I'm not going to say there's no tackles because there are a couple tackles still on the board, but I just think you go after center. Again, Seattle, center. We said it before. We'll say it again. Centers can help make the rest of the offensive line, minus left tackle, look really good. Left tackle, a great left tackle is a great left tackle, but the center can especially help the two guards really pull their weight even more and can be even better. So I think Tyler Linderbaum is great. Some young centers were drafted last year that saw great success. Creed Humphrey is going to be a successful center for a long time in Kansas City. Go after the kid. And then last main pick I'll talk about here, even though I do have my Packers pick on the screen technically, but we'll ignore that for the next run around because I want to get to Justin here. I got Jermaine Johnson now going to 21. I'm sorry, Justin. I know you had him to the Jets. I got him to the Patriots. I know this may not seem like a Bill Belichick type pick because he would really want to go after a defensive player. The smile is just the pain that he's imagining with Jermaine Johnson being a successful pass rusher in New England. But
it's either smile or cry, Jurg.
A lot of crying when it comes to the actual games. But Jermaine Johnson, to me, while Belichick doesn't normally go after pass rushers per se, that team needs a pass rusher. We saw that Buffalo game. Josh Allen murdered that team, and they need someone that could potentially give them a better chance to go after the quarterback. I think Jermaine Johnson can do that. He was on that Georgia team. I like the fact that you pointed out because I think a lot of people, they think kids transfer for one reason or another because they're not tough enough to deal with it or they don't want to deal with competition. These guys just want to play. He played and, went up with it with some great defensive linemen, and then he went and proved that, hey, I could be the main guy on a defensive line in college. So let's see what happens. I think Belichick could really get the most out of this kid. Picking him at 21, I think would be a great, great selection for the Patriots to add to that pass rush that they severely need. Like just pure numbers wise, they need to add guys that could just attack the quarterback.
Just thinking about the Jets games from last year and the fact that the Patriots were only 19th in sacks last year. And then you had a guy like Jermaine Johnson, who is just going to be your pass rush specialist. The only thing that would make me think that Belichick doesn't take him is because he likes those versatile guys.
Right.
But, I mean, that doesn't mean that it's not an excellent fit there, and I hate it.
hey, that's how a draft goes. And the funny part is like, I mean, I have no strong feelings, but especially when it comes to Rick, I can only laugh when you and him eventually have to pick for the division rivals, because as much as you want to pick a bad pick, they're going to most likely make the right pick.
No, you gotta stay true.
Exactly. And to me, I think it makes sense. These 5 picks, I would even come draft day, I would be relatively confident in happening. I think the most surefire thing I've seen, Justin, and we'll not waste any time here. Let's transition a little bit over to some of your picks now. Tyler Linderbaum to the Steelers, because we got some different selections here. One player that was in my specific group there as well. But let's go just real quick with Linderbaum. Like, the Steelers need O-line. He's the top interior offensive lineman in this draft.
Look, the Steelers have been a beacon of smash mouth football since the 70s. Since the Steel Curtain, whenever that was, I can't remember the dates right now. They've always had a great running game. They have fallen off a little bit with James Conner's injuries, and all of a sudden the offensive line fell apart. They lost Le'Veon Bell, obviously not in any of these particular order, but then they lost Big Ben and they lost Marquise Pouncey, and uh, they haven't had the offensive line since. I mean, it looked better last year, but did it look better, or was it a product of a great young running back, taking some of that pressure off that team? And they still had Big Ben who could throw over the top, even though he was throwing ducks. He's still an accurate Hall of Fame passer. He's a good player. So
I will
um,
say this, just
yeah,
in you mentioning Najee Harris, at one point, like the first half, at least the first 6 to 7 games of the season, he was like getting hit behind the line of scrimmage, like to the extent of like we were talking about Saquon Barkley was earlier with the Giants. Like
mhm.
the Steelers' offensive line was just not performing at all. I will say, they did perform a little bit better towards the end. I do give them that credit, but if you're talking about how the running game produced, without question, it's because of Najee Harris. Like I was a big fan of him being a first round pick last year for a reason, because to this day, people still don't want to take a running back in the first round. Granted, if you want to talk about taking a guy fourth overall, okay, I'm kind of with you. Don't take him, but Dallas. But in the pick in the 20s, who could really help out that run game, like I think Najee Harris has proven he's a bona fide stud.
Look, I didn't like that pick. To be completely honest, I was like, "What's the point of taking a running back? You're not going to have the offensive line to protect him. He's not going to do anything." But he shut me up. He had a great year. I do think he takes a step back this year just because there is no Big Ben there, and they're going to have to find a way to supplement that pass coverage. Otherwise, they're going to stack the box in 10, 9 out of 10 plays.
And you can only get away with having a bad offensive line for so long. Ask Russell Wilson how it worked
Exactly.
out without having a great O line.
Exactly. So, yeah, a guy like Linderbaum that'll be there for years. I think he's got the potential to be a gold jacket kind of guy. You know, eh, with Najee Harris there, and now all of a sudden, let's say they take a step back. Let's say Mike Tomlin has his worst season as a head coach. He has his first ever losing season, and all of a sudden they have this great center and this great running back in prime position to pick a quarterback next year. Just wishful thinking. I don't necessarily think it's going to happen that way. I can't imagine them having a losing season. Maybe they're 500 this year. It depends on their schedule. I haven't really looked, but it just seems like something that would work out for the Steelers. Like the last time that they had a top 10 pick, was it Ben Roethlisberger that they took? So, you know, it is what it is. But to my other picks, uh, I had
Wasn't Big Ben like actually 11th overall or something?
shows what I know.
No, I'm just saying because I think the last time they had a top 10 pick, didn't they? I think I remember they traded up for Devin Bush, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, but that wasn't their pick. It was my
Oh,
point.
you mean naturally? Like they didn't trade up? Oh,
Natural, like
okay.
the last time they were bad, the Steelers' actual pick, traded or not, was a high pick.
Justin's trivia for next week. There we go.
I got to find out exactly which pick he was. Um, but yeah, so then we have well, first we have the Chargers taking a tackle, Bernhard Rainman out of Central Michigan. I think he's the best tackle left there. They lost Brian Bulaga. I know that he didn't really play last year. They had a player there that stepped in and played well, but you need someone on the other side of Slater to really improve their tackle positions. I've said it time and time again. You have to keep your quarterback upright. That's why I had Ekwonu going number one overall. I I love Justin Herbert. I mean, if I had to pick one between Herbert and Burrow, I'm picking Burrow, but I think Herbert is a top 5 quarterback in the future of this league. He's got a chance to really, really make his stamp there. He can maybe bring home the title if they keep developing this team and the coaching goes the right way. You got to keep them upright, and they've done a ton to address the defense this year. It's time to protect Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert in Los Angeles.
Hey, who knows? Maybe future AFC Championship game, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. That'd be something to watch.
The NFL is praying. I tell you that. Yeah.
Or Mahomes and Herbert in the
hmm
AFC. Oh my God,
Well,
the AFC just has so much young quarterback talent. Moving on, but just there's a lot of young talent there.
that's a whole other podcast in the future. But Nakobe Dean was my next pick. I have him as my top linebacker in the draft. I think he would be an excellent fit to help revamp this Eagles defense. He could play all over the field. He's fast. He's got elite quickness. He would really bring another edge to, like I said, my predicted number one team in the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles. which also hurts to say. I don't even care about Philly, but like just knowing Philly's good hurts me in a way. Um, here's the intriguing pick now. If they take a quarterback or an offensive lineman, and then they get a top guy like Jameson Williams to play alongside a hopefully healthy um,
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas. Oh my God. We literally just spoke about him. I'm sorry.
You're good, brother.
That's a great, just an elite duo. Let's say they don't even like the quarterbacks that they have this year. Jameis Winston doesn't work out. I mean, listen, I still think Jameis Winston has the ability to throw for 30 touchdowns, especially if he's going to have guys like this throwing to throw the ball to. So I think that'd be an excellent pick, assuming he stays healthy. And Devin Lloyd is just like a Swiss Army knife that Bill Belichick will use to, jab into my wounds twice a year for however long he stays there. And he's just one of those do-it-all guys that fits so well into a Bill Belichick system. And I think they could be a great fit there, unfortunately.
Yeah, Belichick, like there are a couple defensive players in this range potentially. Again, depending, like I definitely don't disagree. I think Nakobe Dean, Devin Lloyd would probably be his top two guys.
Interchangeable there. They're the best linebackers in the draft.
Exactly. I think it's 1-2. If you go with one or the other, can't necessarily blame you. Chargers, obviously, I didn't have the Chargers going offensive line, but I think there's definitely a case to be made. My only thing with Rain Man is that I've read on like Walter Football and stuff like that some people believe that he may be better suited to be a guard at the next level compared to tackle. So maybe that's at least personally for me, the only reason why I didn't have him at 17th overall. But at the same time, I can't necessarily knock the selection. More offensive line is not a bad thing at all. Just solidify the help for Justin Herbert.
Let's say they move him inside. They still have the kid that they used last year, whose name's escaping me, like every other person today. And
was it Rashawn Slater who they got?
No, Rashawn Slater was a left tackle. I had them taking. Well, I know Raymond was a left tackle in college.
Mm-hmm.
I think he played a little bit on both sides. I don't remember it specifically, but they're not gonna replace Slater after 1 year. He was the best rookie tackle in the league. He was a top 10 tackle last year. He was fantastic. I think
I was saying you pair those guys up together, like that's pretty good.
Exactly. You got to have guys that play on both sides, and it might not be the big money position. People might say, "Oh, you're not going to take it with a number one or the first round pick." If you can ensure that Justin Herbert is standing for 10 more plays a game, just 10, sign me up.
That makes a difference.
Sign me up. It makes a huge difference. You got Mike Williams going down the field. You got Keenan Allen all over the place. They took Parham, who was excellent last year. They have Cook. They have Austin Eckler. They had another young running back who, of course, I can't remember his name right now.
I want to say. His last name's Jackson,
yes.
I think.
Yeah. So they have the offensive weapons there. I know a lot of people say, hey, why wouldn't they take Jameson Williams? That would be an excellent third, receiver there, especially if he's hurt. He's going to have the time to come back. Keep them upright. You have to. Football starts in the trenches. I know it's not a glamour position. Football starts in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And if you want to win games, you want to be the best in those positions.
Yeah, because you want to protect your quarterback and you want to go after the other team's quarterback.
Don't underestimate how good the offense and defensive lines of the Rams were last year, because that was the difference in the Super Bowl this year.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. And that's why a lot of people have the Bengals going after offensive line in this draft as well, even with their late first. Speaking of go after the lines, again, because I like, change the norm. I'm not going to go in order once again because, well, actually, I will, just because people saw the pick anyways. I have Treylon Burks going to the Green Bay Packers at 22. Will he probably fall this far in the draft in real life? Who knows? It really all depends on if teams trade up and when a run of receivers happens. But if Burks can somehow, some way find his way to the Green Bay Packers, man, the difference he would make for that team being a true threat, a guy who could get the ball at the apex in the air, just a big body guy compared to what Green Bay has. I know technically Allen Lazard is still in the fold, but I would just like another young receiver there. Allen Lazard still has something to prove. Treylon Burks, I think right away you bring him in, he could make a big impact on that team. It'd be a lot of pressure early, which is why I've been wanting the Packers to try to go after a veteran receiving option or two, because the big name wide receivers are still available. Maybe these guys are just waiting till after the draft to sign, but which I think is the case, funny enough, on the defense side with Tyrann Mathieu. But I think the Packers, They have 2 first-round picks. The Chiefs have 2 first-round picks. I think both teams need to at least use a first on a receiver just to get the young talent in there. And especially if it's a Traylon Burks there, again, we're going no trades. I think I need to re-say this because I think some people might be confused as to why some of these guys are going where they are. It's just at the end of the day, if the draft stayed in the order it is, what teams go after. I think that's a big thing. And I think the Packers will maybe bide their time if this was the universe we lived in and no trades happen. And hey, you get Traylon Burks, I don't think anyone's going to complain about it personally. So let me go back to the trenches now. I got 2 teams taking offensive linemen here. I got Zion Johnson to the Arizona Cardinals. I got Trevor Penning going to the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo, they lost offensive line a little bit in this offseason. I know they got, what's his name, Roger Saffold, but he's more of a guard to me now at this stage. I think you get a young offensive tackle in there can really help out that line. This class is so deep at receiver that I think Buffalo will be in the market for a receiver. But I think Buffalo is more so going to be willing to get one of those guys in the second round where they could really hit on some dark horses here. I think Penning just makes sense, solidify part of the offensive line. Josh Allen doesn't necessarily need the help because the offensive line has been good in Buffalo for the most part in his tenure, but just keep solidifying it, keep him upright even more, give him even more time to throw the ball, which we saw early on this past season. He was still great, but there were some games early on in the year where it just was not clicking right. Again, Justin, those 5 to 10 plays where you give your quarterback a couple extra seconds, supremely valuable in the age where quarterbacks, accuracy is king. And so that's what I have there. Johnson, Arizona's a little tricky because they've gone defense the last couple drafts. I think they need to go after offense. Maybe could they be in the market for a receiver here? Who knows? Because aside from DeAndre Hopkins, I don't know how confident I would be in any of the other guys on that team to be a definitive number 2, but I have them going offensive line just because Kyler got absolutely rocked in that wild card game against the Rams and in the second matchup against the Rams. Essentially, the Rams defensive line is going to potentially make several teams draft offensive line in the first round here. And to me, the Cardinals, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility, just simply for the fact that Cliff Kingsbury teams tend to fall off in the second half of the year. And a big reason the last 2 seasons why that's been is because Kyler's gotten a little bit dinged up here and there. And I don't think we saw a healthy Kyler Murray in the NFC wildcard game. Now, granted, I still think the Rams would have won that game bar anything, but I just don't think Kyler Murray was 100% going into that game. Because again, he got hurt during the season. I don't think he necessarily came back. Granted, I think everyone's playing with injury come the final half of the season. But I think Kyler, like him being dinged up the last couple of years, I think we've seen a drastic difference between healthy Kyler Murray, injured Kyler Murray, and another quarterback being there. You can have your fun with Colt McCoy having that 1 or 2 good games he had with the Cardinals. Who do you want for 17 games? Kyler Murray or Colt McCoy? Exactly. And to finish off my next round of picks, Justin's like, do I want Colt McCoy? No, I probably don't want Colt McCoy. Not even for the
thinking about it.
No, keep Joe Flacco, bud. Keep Joe Flacco.
Yeah. Yes.
And then my last 2 picks here, the Dallas Cowboys and the Tennessee Titans. Dallas, I think a lot of people are trying to question if they could get a receiver. I mean, maybe it is more of a possibility now, but you need to attack other positions on the team. I was definitely considering offensive line here, but I think the thing is that with, I think, another year or 2 with Diggs' contract having to come up, they need to make the decision there. I think they need to add a little bit more youth to the defensive backfield. Andrew Booth Jr. is a guy out of Clemson who I've seen a lot of people mocking late in the first round. A lot of people believe he's a supremely talented kid. I haven't done my research on him compared to some of the other corners in this draft. I will admit corner is probably the position where I'm a little bit weaker in terms of knowing the depth for sure, but I'm going to trust the people that I personally know that have talked about the kid. And Andrew Booth Jr. is a guy that gets a lot of credit being on that Clemson defense for a couple of years. And Clemson has been a pretty good defense the last couple of years. So I'm going to go with him to help the defensive backfield to get the star on the helmet, from the paw print to the star, from Dabo Swinney to Jerry Jones. God, that must suck. And then finally, Nakobe Dean being the linebacker, do-it-all kid for the Tennessee Titans. I hate that I'm picking him here because I love Nakobe Dean and I hate the Tennessee Titans. But best player available. I specifically hate their quarterback. Let me say that.
Okay.
Then again, there are little negative emotions towards the Titans. I'm not gonna lie. Moving on. Nakobe Dean to me is supremely talented, like you said, Justin. A great linebacker, kind of do it all. Whoever your top linebacker is in the draft, it's a pick 'em on when they could go because a lot of teams could use the 2 of them. I think Nakobe Dean specifically here, he would help solidify the linebacking core because the pass rush got a lot better last season in Tennessee. They could go after defensive back here, but I just think linebacker, you get a Nakobe Dean in there, just help things out, especially again with who they're contending with in the AFC, who they're potentially going to be facing. You need some guys that could help cover the intermediate and short parts of the field, which I think Nakobe Dean would have a really good chance of being able to do. And I think he just fills a perfect need there. And again, when it's a need, it's always a question of, do we really need to go after need here? But I think late in the first round with a guy like Nakobe Dean available, that is premium who you want to fill the need right there in regards to that. These are my 5 picks. Some interesting to say the least. Some of these guys falling a little bit further than most would have thought, but this is who I have. You definitely, just when we talk about like differences in some of our mocks, you have Trevor Penning drafted higher than I did personally. Again, I don't think it's because I think there are negatives to him. I just think the way the draft could shape up. Just you want to speak about Penning a little bit as a tackle overall, because I think he's supremely talented.
Yeah, he's a great player. He's a very, very physical run blocker. I think that he's one of these guys that is just he's gonna help his team right away. He's gonna come onto the field and he's gonna be like, all right, this is what I'm doing. There's nothing that the other team's gonna do about it, and he's gonna help these guys run the ball. I think that would be something that would be excellent for Buffalo. I did have him going a little bit higher, which you guys will see in a few minutes. But this kind of period in the draft is where you see, all right, the teams that were not good last year made their picks, and any mistakes they made, the good teams are going to exploit it. And this is where these guys that start to fall all of a sudden find these homes that are just excellent fits, and they do, a hell of a lot for these teams. I think Zion Johnson is an excellent pick for the Cardinals. I think that they really need to do their best to protect Kyler Murray. Like I keep saying, keep your guys upright. That's why there's so many offensive linemen going in this draft.
Especially since you're about to pay Kyler, by the way. Like, if they are about to pay Kyler Murray, then what true, but let's just assume then what you need to do, people always talk about how the rookie quarterback contract is so valuable. Well, what you need to do once you pay your quarterback, just draft smart. It's not that difficult. Now, yes, can you miss on picks? Sure. But just draft intelligent. Be as diligent as you can be. And one way to do that is drafting offensive linemen, because that's cheap 4-year deals. And Zion Johnson to be a fixture on that offensive line for 4 years while Kyler's finally getting paid, it's just logic.
Absolutely.
It's just logic. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on Andrew Booth Jr.?
I wanted to talk about Trayvon Burks because I think that that would be the best move that they could do to try and replace Devontae Adams. I say try because it is a seemingly impossible task.
Right.
That being said, he is an excellent player. I think he'd be an excellent fit there. I was extremely tempted to take him for the Packers at 22. I went with my obvious motif and theme of the draft as keeping your guys upright, and that's actually where I took Trevor Penning. But I can't knock Trayvon Burks there. Here's my guys, obviously. So Trevor Penning, I wanted to keep Rodgers upright, and I think he would be the best run stuffer that they could have for those two excellent running backs there. They just speaks for itself. Devontae Wyatt, they lost Chandler Jones. They struggled a bit in pass rush more than people thought they would after that first game when Chandler Jones had 5 sacks. They absolutely need help in the secondary. I think they could use an offensive lineman, but to me, Devontae Wyatt was the best player and the best scheme fit for the Cardinals at this position. Trayvon Burks, listen, you traded Amari Cooper. That's it. You traded Amari Cooper. They need another receiver. I don't think I don't think that just CeeDee Lamb is going to help him out. I know
Michael Gallup coming off of injury.
Yeah, no, I know that people are going to say Michael Gallup, but he had one season that was a number 2 receiver. He was all right. He was better than a lot of other teams. Maybe he would have been number 1 on other teams, but I don't think he's a true number 1 guy. I think that they really need a receiver, and I don't think Jerry Jones lets anyone pass up on Trayvon Burks at this position.
I think if any of the big name receivers are somehow still available at 24, like he's making sure they pick the receiver. That's not a doubt.
For sure. For a team that was top 5 in defense last year, I think were the Bills number 1 in total defense last year?
I want to say yes. If not, they were definitely, like you said, top 5, but they were up there.
Yeah, they were like 11th in rush defense, or less than that actually, because they were rough. Jordan Davis is one of the best run defenders we've seen in a long time, and he's an excellent interior lineman. They really tried to address the the defensive line in the previous draft. They drafted a couple of defensive ends. Their sack totals were good, but again, they struggle against teams that could really run the ball. That's where a lot of their losses came from. That's how they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. If people remember, Jacksonville played excellent defense, and they ran the ball. They rammed it right down the Bills' throat. And Zion Johnson. Now, this is similar to my motif, but not exactly the same because I don't care about Ryan Tannehill because his success is 100%.
And that's why we do a show.
No, listen, I think Ryan Tannehill is a serviceable quarterback. He proved that his time in Miami was a mistake, and it was not on him. He's a good quarterback. He's not elite. He's not going to win you the Super Bowl, but he can be a Super Bowl winning quarterback if
and
you
to your
keep
point,
Derrick Henry.
I was about to say, to your point, he's not the center of the offense. Other guys.
No. You want to keep Derrick Henry untouched for as long as possible. And I listen, if I could be the Titans, I'd go up. This is a great offensive line draft. I'd move up as much as I can and take as many offensive linemen as I can as early as possible because they need to keep Derrick Henry on the field. They cannot suffer through another Derrick Henry injury season. And hopefully they don't because the league is better with Derrick Henry in it.
Absolutely. And honestly, Justin, I think you bring up a very interesting point here where could the Tennessee Titans be a surprise team in terms of trading up? Because they lost Compton a couple of years ago. He signed with the Browns. They cut Saffold this past offseason. That they need some offensive line. I think that's a kind of an underrated position. I think you're one of the few people I've heard really stress that for the Titans.
Yeah, listen, I don't know if they will. I think that they're in decent position. If I'm not mistaken, I think their second round pick is a little bit earlier.
Right.
And if I'm the Titans, all systems are a go. They've been a good team for a long time. They've been in the mix. They've been a top contender in the AFC, and they seem to be falling behind a little bit. If they're not going to go to a straight rebuild, they need to double down on everything they're doing. And what's that philosophy in LA? Fuck them picks. I don't need those late round picks. Get me impact players today and put me in a Super Bowl. And I would like to. If Derrick Henry doesn't make a Super Bowl, then it is a true crime for his career. And it's a disservice by the Tennessee Titans.
Agreed.
I don't know if he will. It is very difficult to do it the way they're doing it.
Right.
But they're relevant. And realistically,
hasn't really been done in the modern era. So
everyone's talking about, Jonathan Taylor is going to be the number one back this year, blah, blah, blah. You know, it took him 2 full games against 2 of the worst defenses to catch his yards after contact last year.
Right.
Again, Derrick Henry's yards after contact was 2 full games better than Jonathan Taylor's. Not total yards after contact.
For a full season.
2 full games better than Jonathan Taylor. He was out for 2 full weeks before Jonathan Taylor caught that number. Don't get me wrong. Jonathan Taylor had an excellent season. I rode him through many fantasy leagues.
Right.
But Derrick Henry's still a guy. And until he proves otherwise, to me, he's the best running back in football by a long shot.
Oh, 100%. Derrick Henry. He is the engine for that Tennessee Titans team. He's going to be the reason. Like, Tennessee needs to figure out a way that in the playoffs, that's when Ryan Tannehill, that's when he needs to show up to help support Derrick Henry. Because if Tannehill can play really in the playoffs, like Derrick Henry's job just becomes 10 times easier.
Absolutely. The King needs castle defenses. Start with Zion Johnson.
There we go. And speaking of things coming to an end, including Ryan Tannehill's career. No, I'm kidding. Championship windows closing, maybe, who knows. We're gonna go with my last 6 picks. I'll do it properly. I'll go straight order this time. Everyone yelling in the comments. I'm gonna start at 27 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bernhard Rainman, just like you, Justin, I think he's definitely valuable. The Buccaneers lost some offensive linemen this offseason, and they need to add it to it. This kid's available. Kind of like we said, he could play tackle. Some of the stuff I read, maybe he could be a guard. Hey, maybe might as well transition him into the guard spot. You lost both your starting guards this past offseason. You lost Alex Kappa. Ali Marpet retired. Like, things that you need to do. Ryan Jensen as well.
Ryan Jensen came back. He thought he might leave, but as soon as Brady was back, Ryan Jensen hopped right on board.
Hopped right back on.
And then they traded for Moses from New England.
Right.
But they still need
Shaq Mason. Was it Shaq Mason or? I think it's him.
Now I don't know.
They're
Names are not
just
my
names.
strong suit today, ladies and gentlemen.
You're good, brother. You're good. But hey,
Yeah.
Rayman could be a good addition to that offensive line. You got Donovan Smith, Tristan Wirfs holding down the tackle spot. You'd have Rayman in there with those veterans. A young offensive lineman among 4 veterans who have had success and have won Super Bowl or Super Bowls in Shaq Mason's case. Like, how there's 0 negatives. Obviously, it'll take him a little bit of time. But when you have one offensive lineman with those 4 and Tom Brady's a quarterback, the kid will be fine. The kid will be more than fine. I think Tampa Bay, just generally speaking, like they do have to go after offensive line because Brady's back. He's probably going to want to stay upright. I'm just saying. And I think they did their due diligence of adding some wide receiver depth with free agency. So I think this can allow them to go after offensive line in the draft. Speaking of which, let's go after teams that have addressed wide receiver already and go after something else. The Green Bay Packers, of course, I had them go with Burks earlier at 22. I'm having them go with Daxton Hill here. I think Daxton Hill is a very versatile defensive back. He could play corner potentially. He could maybe handle some of the slot nickel coverages for the Packers that they really need, like a bona fide, like a true stay-at-home nickel, like a guy in specific packages. I think that's what Daxton Hill will be. He could also be safety, though. They want to see if Darnell Savage is the real deal. And I think if he isn't, Daxton Hill can also play safety. He's supremely talented. I think it makes sense. Back-to-back picks here. I got Jahan Dotson and Kyrie Elam for the Kansas City Chiefs. They need to add to the wide receiver core. They need to add to the defensive back core. I got them going with both these selections here. I think Dotson, now we're getting to the point where some of these wide receivers are more so second-round grades, and does Kansas City maybe go with him? I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit iffy on this, but I'm just assuming the fact that they're going to go with a wide receiver in round 1. And Dotson, to me, is not a bad pick. Played really well at Penn State. I think the kid has some promise. And you put him with Patrick Mahomes. Like, this is the thing with the Packers and Chiefs with having wide receiver selections. It's Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Yes, there will be some expectations you got to perform. But you got 2 guys who are going to help, get you the ball in the right places when you need it. And Kyrie Elam, again, they lost some defensive back. I know some people might argue safety for them, but I think, they've lost so much with corner specifically. They need to add a guy. Kyrie Elam, I think he's getting overlooked a lot. I think he's a very good guy who can, make a couple plays. I think he'd be a great selection here for the Kansas City Chiefs. Last 2 picks that I have, Kenyon Green, Justin, you said it yourself, the Cincinnati Bengals. It does not matter how much they've done. They need to continue to do more with this. Keep Joe Burrow upright, and need to make sure he stays as healthy as can be this season, of course, but especially throughout his entire career. I think a lot of people, even though they've addressed it, I think a lot of people are going to still want the Bengals to attack offensive line with this pick specifically. And there's some really good interior guys still available, like to be late first round, early second round picks. And I think that's what the Bengals need to do. And then finally at 32, Detroit could do a lot of things here. Do you go after another position? Do you maybe go after a quarterback just to groom, see if he can do something? That's what I have here. I have Matt Corral. To me personally, Matt Corral would be my 3rd quarterback off the board amongst all the guys. I just like looking at him in Ole Miss again, man. It's just something about Matt Corral playing on the field that I like. I think he's got some really good touch with the football. Again, he's another guy. He uses his legs a little bit, maybe not to the extent that Pickett and Willis did. But I think he was pretty good at making some plays with his legs. But I think more so the ability to be maneuverable in the pocket per se. I think that's something that's really valuable for these young quarterbacks. I think Corral's good at it. He played like he has experience, being prepared for pro style offense. I think Matt Corral is going to be a guy who could have some success, and Detroit is trying to build around for a quarterback. I'm not saying Corral will be the guy. I don't think it's a bad choice. Like, this is what multiple first round picks buys you for Detroit specifically. You can risk using it on a quarterback, quote unquote risk. You could use it on a quarterback here and potentially get a guy who, if he's the answer, maybe. If not, who knows? Like, I don't think it's not a bad thing if they end up going quarterback here. And a lot of people, some people are trying to say they might do it at number 2. I don't think that's going to be the case at all. I think at 32,
that'd be something,
right? It'd also be the most Detroit Lions thing ever. But I think the big thing, go after. If you want a quarterback, just go after the young guy here with your late first round pick. And I got Matt Corral.
For a team that's been bad for a long time, there's really only been one quarterback pick they've had in the last 15 years, because they've had Stafford. They've had that pillar of excellence there for so long. So it'll be interesting to see what they do if they go for a quarterback. I obviously love Kenyon Green, as everyone will see once my mock draft comes up. And yeah, you got to protect Brady there. I think that's an excellent move. I was slightly different in terms of Kansas City. I was slightly different across the board. I like Jalen Petrie for Tampa Bay. I think that they had a rough secondary last year. and they lost one of their starting corners to the Jets. Thank God. So I think Jalen Petrie would be an excellent fit there. He's a good big cornerback out of Baylor who could be an excellent piece for them. They really had a rough go in the secondary last year, and I think that would help to move towards improvement. For the Packers, part of me thinks they might go double receiver with these first 2 picks. I had them taking a tackle in Trevor Penning, but if there's a second receiver here like Chris Olave that falls, there's a very big chance that they go out and they take that second wide receiver because their wide receiver core is old and they are lacking. The Chiefs had another team that they had struggles on defense last year. They still have Patrick Mahomes. Their offensive line could maybe use some work. I wouldn't put it past them to take someone like a Kenyon Green or if like Penning falls, but they needed pass rush. Their pass rushers were old, and they just lost Tyrann Mathieu. They're going to need a safety. These are 2 guys that I think could make immediate impacts, assuming that they're healthy. Obviously, Ajabo had that Achilles tear. And yeah, Kenyon Green, keep Joe Burrow upright. Keep Joe Burrow upright. Please protect Joe Burrow at all costs. The league cannot suffer through another Joe Burrow injury to the capacity that we had year 1 for him. And I went a little spicy.
And the scare at the end of the season as well.
Yeah. So hopefully that's an issue that is solved with this year's offseason, considering they addressed 4 offensive lineman spots with this pick. And I went a little spicy. I went Desmond Ridder. There's a lot of chatter that he's a guy that a few teams like in the first round, though, early in the draft. He had some intangible things. He's a winner. He proved that in Cincinnati. I'd like to see what the kid has, especially with Penei Sewell there blocking for him. They had a decent run game last year. They're starting to get some good young receivers there. Obviously, long-term, Jared Goff is not the solution, especially with all the money he's making. He doesn't have to start right away this year because Desmond Ridder will be a project. Goff still has a year left on his deal and is making a ton of money. This might be an interesting fit there in Detroit. What do you think about that, Jared?
I mean, I don't blame it. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Lions will go after a I think, personally, if Ridder or Corral is definitively there, because who knows with the amount of quarterback movement we could see, right? Well, I feel like we've kind of alluded to a couple teams like could maybe trade up, maybe not super high, but maybe in 20s if they want a quarterback. Maybe the Falcons surprise us. A lot of people have tried to link them to Malik Willis or maybe even Kenny Pickett. Like, it really all depends where, to me, the second quarterback goes. If Ridder and or Corral is available at this point, I think if you're Detroit, why not pick one of them, whoever you like the most between the two. Like you said, they're going to sit behind Jared Goff for at least a full season because there's no reason to not let Jared Goff go for a majority of this year. And then last 3-4 games of the season, there's the curtain call for the kid to get his first opportunities of his career, have him play a little bit. I think that'd be really good. You have that, like you said, like you got the franchise left tackle. They're continuing to build that team. Amon-Ra St. Brown. They got a DJ Chark from the Jacksonville Jaguars on a 1-year deal. I think he could be really good for them. They're starting to build up that core a little bit. They have TJ Hawkinson still, which hopefully he's healthy for a full season. If he is, that, again, big weapon for a young quarterback, a good tight end. So much that they could do. I also have yes, in this specific case, I mocked Corral. Maybe I could change my mind and maybe I think they should just go after another player, but I think the Lions are the team where it's like with their second first tier, I don't blame them at all for going quarterback. Because why not? Like you afford yourself this extra opportunity. I believe they still have multiple first next year. I think they have the Rams first next year as well from this Goff deal, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it was last year's first that was also there. I forget off the top of my head, but they have the potential to still be a top team next year in the next year's quarterback draft class. Like Detroit, it's so flexible and fluid the situation. You can take the risk here for a young quarterback, and you give him the last 3, 4, 5 games of the season, see what the kid can do. If you don't think he could have it, they don't have it. Or maybe if they do, then you start building around even more around that young piece, and you get specific players for that guy. And Ridder as well, I think he helped build that Cincinnati program, and he helped bring them to that college football playoff spot. I have zero qualms. Like I picked Corral again, but if you tell me Desmond Ridder's the guy here, I'm not going to disagree. I think Desmond Ridder could be a really good quarterback if he goes to the right team and develops. And Detroit would definitely be interesting. because it's a different style compared to Goff. Like I think with Corral, it would be a little bit more seamless, but I definitely don't think Desmond Ridder is a bad selection at all. And kind of like you mentioned, the Chiefs pick to me are the most interesting because you go back-to-back defense. I don't disagree. Maybe the Chiefs just wait till the second round to address the wide receiver position if they think they're maybe overdrafting.
I think they'll take one eventually, assuming they don't sign a couple more guys, although there's not really much out there left there. But I do think they'll take a receiver eventually. I just don't necessarily think it's the first round.
Right. And I don't blame the logic, especially
unless someone falls, of course.
Well, I was going to say David Ojabo is not bad at all. Yes, he had the big injury. He's probably going to miss most of, if not all, his rookie season. But you get that guy for future years. Like a lot of people were very high on him. You get a safety there. The defensive backfield needs help. Chris Olave, if he somehow falls to 28 and Green Bay can go back-to-back receiver picks, I think they will. If they get Burks and Olave, oh my God, forget about it. You completely hit the reset at receiver for the team there. And then Kenyon Green, again, Cincinnati. Please keep Joe Burrow alive. For all of our sakes. Please. That's all we have to say. And please, I'm sure the people are wondering, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, that was our specific personal first round mocks here on the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Again, we are going to be doing a more complete mock draft next week. It'll be different the way we do it. It's not going to be us making every single pick. We're going to divide up a little bit differently. I think machinations are in the work here in the back of everything, but I think we did a bang up job. I think we showed a lot of people the possibilities of what the first round could end up being. And once again, Pro Football Focus for the mock draft simulator. Just thank you so much. It's an amazing thing that they created ultimately at the end of the day.
I've had a lot of fun with it.
Oh my God, absolutely. I'm still going to be doing mocks even after the show ends. It's just fun. Justin, brother, this was a banger. Rick, we missed him, but I think we did him right. Well, he's probably going to yell at me for Jameson Williams next week, but
I think he's going to have a lot to say about a lot of our picks, to be honest. I can't wait to hear about that.
I think Rick's review needs to be its own episode next week.
I was going to say that,
I think we need to do two separate ones. I think
he might need to just post something online and tag us in it, and we'll see what's going on.
I think so. I think so. So ultimately, that ends this week's episode of the pod. Justin, once again, brother, thank you so much. This was a hell of a time.
Yeah, I love this stuff. So draft time is, as a Jet fan, my favorite time of year. It represents the most hope in the league, and hopefully maybe one of these years will change that. But as of right now, cannot wait for April 28th.
Yes, we cannot wait. And until then, we will continue to mock these NFL draft picks because that's really all we can do at this point because we're slowly starting to get to the point where we just want the draft to happen. But the NFL, they're making us wait, Justin. They want us to. They're waiting for us to just get to that point where once the draft is, it's like finally we're here. And we hope that all the viewers feel the same way on the next episode when you see the notification come out that it's up. So, guys, once again, thank you all so much for joining us. We are a relatively new podcast, of course, us doing this, but I think we're just having a lot of fun with this right now, and we're having a good time. And that's what this podcast is here for. So thank you for joining us on this journey of enlightenment in this episode, where we hope you learned something about the NFL draft prospects, but also hope that you had a fun time with us and our selections as well. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you guys next week.